Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. Happy 2024, guys. It's Andrew Hada. I'm back. Did you see the new commercial? Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? That's 4 movies now that you got to go watch, or I'm going to keep the commercials and they keep getting longer. Welcome back to the Bomb Squad. Also, thank you guys. I don't know why you guys have been watching our stuff, but you've really been fucking watching our
Hell
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, you've really been watching it. We just got demonetized because they cursed. It does not matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that. It's super cool. And so we really appreciate it. And so we have a fun movie for you and a fun year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking, this is a Josh pick, a rare Joshua pick.
It's true.
And once you read the plot, you're going to be like, oh, I get it. I get why Josh picked this movie.
I'm not the weirdo of the group.
It's from 19
Relatively normal.
it's from 1975. The film is called The Boy and His Dog, starring Don Johnson and Jason Robards, who you don't know, but if you saw him, you'd be like,
He's
"Oh
that
yeah,
guy.
it's that guy." It also he was like in Magnolia and All the Presidents. Man, you know who he is. It's also directed by LQ Jones, who you don't know who that
But you
is,
do.
but William
That's
does
true.
because he's he's a dirty county commissioner from
Yes, he
Casino.
absolutely is.
What the
He
hell?
was a big
Yeah.
Peckinpah guy too. He was in a lot of like The
Yeah.
Wild Bunch and like The Ballad of Cable Hogue, which also had Jason Robards.
And if you see a picture of him, you'd be like, "Why the hell are you directing this
Yeah.
movie? Why aren't you hunting outlaws in the old
Right.
west?" Um, but yeah, so it stars Don Johnson. It's a cool movie. Joshua, since you love this movie so much, but only one specific part of it, why don't you tell us what this movie is about?
Okay, so after a nuclear war in the year 2024,
Oh my
what?
gosh. We might live
Oh,
long
We're
enough to see
living
that
it
future.
now.
it's happening now. Soon as
Hello.
soon as
The favorite.
Haley becomes president. What?
President Vivek. No,
President RFK, this is the future he wants.
so after decades of nuclear
Mhm.
fallout, a boy and his dog walk the wasteland, um, kind of searching for food and supplies, but mostly just searching for women.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And food.
the dog is searching for food.
The dog
The
wants
Yeah.
a
dog
better
blood
life.
is looking for food and shelter, The boy is not looking for food or
The
shelter.
boy
He's looking for sex.
exclusively
Yeah.
wants to sleep with
Yeah.
women,
This
and
is
I don't
like,
mean that in the nice
No,
way.
it's he doesn't know
yeah.
how to ask
It's also,
nicely. He's not a
it's
very
also
polite man.
if you watch the trailer, it says an R-rated kinky tale of survival. It's not
No.
kinky. What they're doing is not kinky
No.
stuff, okay?
It's, well, okay, to be fair, to the movie sets the tone pretty well right away, where it's the boy and the dog coming across a group of like just like raiders killing a woman that they've and he comes across a
They've had
corpse.
they've had their way with her, which is how we'll have to put it so that we don't get further
Yeah,
demonetized.
Yeah.
they've killed her, and he looks over and says, "Oh, they didn't leave any of the good parts." And you're
Yeah,
like,
Yeah. They
he
didn't
kind
have
of
to
"Oh,
tells
cut her.
her
oh, he's horrible."
Mhm.
he's mad because they could have used her for a couple more times or
Yeah.
days
Right.
before murdering her. And so that kind of sets the tone for what kind of movie. William, had you seen this movie before?
No, I'd always heard about it, and like I've played all the Fallout games, or at least the ones that are first person shooters, and so it was always kind of like in the wheelhouse, and I was like, I'll get around to seeing this someday. But
Yeah.
it was I will say it was surprising that first scene. I was like, oh yeah, this is so Fallout, and then it gets to like, why'd they cut her? There's like more turns to be had, and I was just like, damn, this is like it's. I feel like if I would watch
Yeah.
this in college, I would have been like, oh, how interesting! Like it's a strange morality tale. But like watching it now, it's like, fuck, dude.
I know.
Oh no,
I feel like
it is
No.
I
black
I feel
comedy.
like this is
Yeah.
kind of what like the time like because there's that scene in Road Warrior that I think of where he's like watching and it's two raiders again and they take a couple and they kill the dude
Hmm.
and then they have their way with the girl and he's watching them and he's like not doing anything. It's to kind of show like in this world, the morals are different.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be like jumping to
Yeah, it's
helping people.
purely like survival.
Right.
A boy and his dog takes it to a complete other extreme where
Yeah.
it's like he's participating. And on one hand, I do appreciate it because like one of the things that annoys me, especially about like zombie movies, does this a lot where they like, oh, we can't kill these raiders even though they attacked us because
Blah
that
blah
would be
blah.
wrong. It's like, no, we live in a world where we don't have that much food or that many bullets.
Yeah.
So we have to like, we have to protect our stuff. We can't really be putting people on trial
Yeah.
if we barely surviving. And
And
so,
in like society, like people kill each other for way less anyways. So it's just like that's the
right.
thing I thought was interesting in reading about because I guess like Harlan Ellison is the guy who wrote the novella for this, and
Mhm.
like I've only ever read one other story by him, and that's the one. It's like the famous one. I have no mouth, but I want to scream, or something
Oh,
like
right.
that.
I'm a scream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
have that
it's
book.
it's really
Yeah.
good, and it's like fucked up and twisted. So like seeing that he
Right.
wrote this novella was kind of interesting, and so I read that like he's supposed to be like someone who is uneducated and was like never taught anything about like morals and like
Yeah.
things like that. So that's why he's just totally fine with walking around raping people. Which I would imagine in like a novella you could probably get that through a little bit easier, but it's funny like the movie just like jumps like straight into it, so it's like as a
Like it's very
very modern audience you're like,
well.
whoa, this is fucked up.
It's almost like to me it's interesting because obviously like this is essentially like the genesis of like the post-apocalyptic like
Whole deal.
Mad
Yeah.
Max Fallout, like all, and then it's like there's a Fallout show coming out in like 3 months. It's
Mhm.
like this is that, but with a $20 budget.
Right.
Um,
It's definitely more of
but
the
like
road
you know,
than anything else
yeah, yeah,
besides
and
the road.
it's the road where like everything is as bad as it is in the road, but from the perspective of someone who does not give
Yeah,
a shit. And I
exactly.
think that's like
Right.
almost more like he just grew up in the wasteland, right? Like he
Yeah.
doesn't have any concept like this is bad. He's like, oh no, I just want to have sex, and I kind of respect that about it. It's
Yeah.
like he has no. He's also really I forgot this the first time. He's
Yeah.
actually really capable. Like he's really good at
Yeah,
fighting.
totally,
Like he
yeah.
And I
kills a
think
lot of people.
I
Yeah.
think that's one of the interesting things is like because okay, so one of the things we didn't mention is that Blood, who's a dog, and Vic, who's a kid, they have a telepathic link that may
Yes.
or may not be
Mhm.
real because nobody else knows about it and nobody else talks about it. And
Yeah.
you don't see any other dogs. And so like the way they talk, but I think one of the things that kind of makes this movie so you're not just like kind of disgusted with it the whole time is this kind of naivety that Don Johnson brings
Yeah.
to the character of Vic. Like he doesn't understand why anything is wrong or like even how how a society would run.
Right.
outside of him and the dog, just like going from place to place, killing who they can and taking what they want.
Just
You know,
basic
like
needs, just like basic
yeah,
impulses,
Right, and
basic
there's
needs.
and I do think they almost offset it because the dog as portrayed is smarter than him,
Yeah,
like by a
he's like an
mhm,
lot,
intellectual
and
dog.
so it's you have the dog to contrast him being like, oh, you're like a fucking idiot,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
right.
like he's like kind of like, no, we need to like focus on survival, not
Hmm.
you running after like every woman you see, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I do think it's funny, like if you've ever, because William mentioned Fallout, but if you ever played Fallout, like there wasn't just a random like, oh, they're both post-apocalyptic. This movie was heavily inspired Fallout.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
yeah,
literally, he calls the dog
yeah.
dog meat, and that's the
Very.
name of the dog in every
Hmm.
single
right,
Yeah,
Fallout game, and
there's mutants in it.
there's
yeah,
You
even
yeah.
know,
Glowing
I completely
mutants.
forgot the it's not like a big part of the movie, but near the beginning you see a guy has like a little like caravan, and he's kind of
hmm
like a warlord, and he's like making people dig,
Hmm.
and he has like a guitar
Yeah,
player like strung up, and I was like, oh, it's like Dollar Store Morton
yeah,
Joe
yeah,
with his like guitar player before they like had the budget. I don't know. It is cool too because we all three of us were involved in the making of the last ones now on
yeah,
Tubi,
it's over
and
there.
this movie had similar like, oh man, we used the same effect to get like the bloody
yeah,
corpses, just like
Yeah,
laying on the ground in every other shot, stuff like
yeah,
that. I was like, oh,
yeah.
I recognize this set dressing.
Well, and I think it's interesting, like, because when we did the last ones, we definitely checked into like what you would do if like once you had to survive and like how quickly the food would go out, which plays into the movie. And this movie, it's kind of like even past that, but they really think like, oh yeah, you're not like there's no one really has cars anymore. Everyone's just kind of walking around.
hmm,
You know, like they just wear the clothes that they have, and it just kind of comes off in layers and stuff. So, and I wonder, like, once this Fallout show comes out, how it's going to contrast with this, because it's going to be definitely neutered in a way. Like, it's
yeah.
not, I don't even think it's going to have, like, I mean, it's definitely not going to have the morality
I
of,
don't think it'll
No,
star a rapist.
definitely
Yeah.
right.
not. That guy will be
But I think even,
crucified.
like, even the fact that, like, to get food, what they do is they kind of run up on this thing and shoot at people and then grab what they can and then take off, like
Yeah.
it's not they're not like at any point like no life is not like no life is too valuable
Right.
to these
Yeah.
people. Like everything is
Hmm.
disposable. And I think that that's kind of like, if you're going to make a post-apocalyptic movie, you sometimes you want to go all the
Yeah.
way, like I think of
Right.
I wonder about the backlash to like Poor Things, the Emma Stone movie that's out right now. It's like, man, I can't even imagine if this movie gets popular. Maybe thanks to this review.
Absolutely.
Um, but like if more people see this, they're gonna be like, what in the world
Yeah.
is going on?
Yeah. I mean, plus like
Yes.
Amazon plus like Bethesda Studios, like there's no way they're gonna be able to get like super bleak at all. Like it's gonna be
Right.
so
No, and
fucking regular.
to
But
be
I
fair, as a Fallout historian
Of
myself,
course.
I will say the first couple games before Bethesda bought it.
Oh, like the top
Um,
down ones? I never
yeah,
played
yeah, it
those.
does. There's some pretty dark
Oh,
like
really?
there's like a gang like where it's like if you want to join the gang, your initiation is you have to beat one of their like sex slaves to death just to show like what a bad person you
Totally.
are. So that was definitely like you could almost see how slowly they kind of took out anything that there was like you had the ability to just shoot anyone including children, and but like the
Yeah.
entire like game would hate you for it. You'd be called a child killer. It was one of those things where it's like it's good that they didn't keep that. It's good that they got away from
Right,
that, but it
right.
almost is like, okay, the spirit of it is like, yeah, in the wasteland anyone could do
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah, because
so
Fallout 3, you can't even
yeah,
shoot kids in number
Curiously,
3.
and
It's like
yeah,
your
and I
aim just
think
goes
like
away.
right.
obviously I wouldn't want every movie about post-apocalyptic to be this hardcore. But again, I think it gives a different perspective, and it kind of like it forces you to face things that you might not have to in like in I Am Legend,
Mhm.
like you're never unless you watch the director's cut. But even then it's kind of like it gives you an out. And this movie does not give you an out, which kind of like makes it interesting. It makes it hard to even talk about, even to discuss.
Yeah.
And so like one of the cool things is the dog and the boy, they have this pact, and like all their scenes together are really good. So that's why halfway through the movie, they completely separate the dog from the boy. You don't see him again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
this.
they meet. So they meet. They find this girl, and like earlier in the movie, you find out that someone's tracking Vic. And so they meet this girl, and like he's going to do the thing to her, and she's
Yeah.
like, and then they get attacked, and he saves her, and they're like, oh, we don't have to. Look, there's my
Hey, what's
dog.
up, doggy dog?
Yeah.
We also have a telepathic link. He's
Yeah.
leaving.
Wow.
He was like, enough of that
Yeah.
movie. But they so like she's like, oh, we can just do it the normal way. And so they do it for a couple days, and she's like, "Oh, I live in this
To
underground
be fair, he
commune."
does save her from an
Yeah,
even worse. It
Yeah.
does the whole like, oh, he's not so bad compared to these like rapists
Yeah.
slash
mutants. I
killers.
think they're mutants. Yeah,
Well, yeah, first it's raiders, and then it's mutants. And you never see the mutants, but they get like they have the off-screen like glow
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
through the windows and stuff, which I loved. But yeah, he saves her. He kills like I don't know 10 people or something like that, and then she's like, okay, I actually like you
Yeah.
now.
but I think
Classic.
it's also interesting because you know that they're tracking him, so it's like, is that really like, did she really fall in love, or did she really like, oh, I like you now, or is it like either way, um, that it's like, oh well, how much of this was planned? But anyway, so she's like, I live in this underground commune. You should come. We can like be together. And then he's like, okay. And then she's like, but you can't take your dog. And so he leaves the dog behind. He goes with her. He tells the dog like, "Oh, go, you'll be okay." And so the back half of this movie is him kind of like trying to figure out this commune.
Mhm.
And I heard
Yeah,
that they're novellas.
it's in an underground vault,
It
and
Yeah.
definitely feels like a different novella
it's
than the
it,
first one, you
Right.
know?
I forgot because they do this thing essentially. It's this like hyper rigid American dystopia where everyone is like control. It's very Handmaid's Tale almost,
They'll wear face makeup
But
and different uniforms.
to show how like horrible it is, they have like loudspeakers blasting like just generic like American food like recipes. Um, to be like, oh, it's this like unrelenting Americana, but they never shut that recorder off for the whole like sequence. It's underground, and it gets so annoying. It's like I know it's intentionally annoying.
Right.
Maybe like make it a little less annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have 50 sounds going at once in every single
Right,
scene
right.
underground for like half the movie. It's that did get to me. I was like, all right,
I
just
get it.
And it's just such a weird, like, different. Like, everyone's dressed like they're all wearing whiteface for some reason.
Mhm.
I assume it's a racial thing. And they're wearing clothes like from old timey, like before World War II.
I assume it's supposed to be like kind of a like where you worship the founding fathers so much you do like the wigs and powders and
Yeah.
stuff that they
Yeah.
do, you know?
And like there's like a marching band. They like kind of treat it like they don't know what's going up upstairs. And they're like, they tell Vic like, oh, what we're gonna do is like you're gonna be a stud, and we're gonna put you out to like have babies because you're like young and you're fit.
Yeah, they can't have
Virile.
children anymore because they've lived underground for so long and it's like stunted their society.
Yeah. And Vic has like at one point I think they say that he has like a ringworm.
Oh yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, it's a ringworm, but
Just
it'll
like
be
a dude-
okay.
Yeah,
No big deal.
they like scrub. Well, and it's funny because and again, this is ostensibly a comedy. He's like, oh, great, just line him up like all
Yeah,
like,
he
whoever
wants
you
it.
want. And then it cuts to him like hooked up to a milking machine,
Yeah, yeah.
like forcibly, and
Electrolysis.
Yeah.
they're making every woman like marry him
Mhm.
before
And they also yeah, it's Jordan Peterson's nightmare. And so that part's interesting, but it's so like against the grain of what like the rest of the beginning of the movie was, you know?
Mhm.
And it almost like the movie ends up feeling like those Simpsons episodes where like the whole first act is just unrelated to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of like going along for the ride. And I think it's kind of interesting. Like Mad Max does this too. It just kind of like does it way better. Where they like every Mad Max movie is Max kind of running into this random world that he's not a part of. He's just kind of shown up and he ruins everyone's life for a while.
Yeah.
And then maybe some people get a little bit better.
Mhm.
But for the most part, Max is just there to fuck things up. It feels a little bit like that, but I think like we spent too much time in the other section. Then once we get to this section, we're just kind of like, oh, Are we not going back? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very like because even and this is also one of those things too. I don't know if they just did a million takes, but when he's like with the dog above ground, it's like, I mean, this dog's like really good. Like they have a really good like I don't know if they just
Back and
shot the
forth.
dog
Mhm.
enough,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of the back and forth and the way they like do like the dog reacting to him. At one point, they go to like a vintage movie
Yeah,
where he
yeah.
has to like
It's like a snuff
hang
film,
up
a
his
weird thing. Yeah.
guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all like sex films because the whole thing is like
Yeah.
hypersexualized, you know. But it's
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is such a cool like little like wasteland movie theater they built, you know.
Yeah.
And you kind of get away from that underground, where it's just like kind of a big bunker. So
Right.
Yeah. It's like much less of a
Yeah.
world. It's
Yeah.
more of a society than a world. And you're kind of more interested in like what's going on everywhere.
it's more of a Twilight Zone
Hmm.
episode.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's just like, okay, it's
Yeah.
like the bad extreme version of America. I get it, you
Right.
know.
I think Josh kind of like he said that it's one of those movies where you like it feels like one of those Star Trek episodes where they're like, "Oh, we landed on a gangster planet
Hmm.
where everyone's
Yeah,
gangster,"
yeah.
and like
Yeah, where it's like
um
here's the lesson. I was actually saying
Mhm.
that about Logan's Run, but it's kind of true of the back half of this movie
Yeah.
too. All 70s sci-fi has that same mix. I think what does set this movie apart is that it um kind of how far it takes like its concept, and that's kind of where it's
yeah.
like, okay, I can see why this kind of spawned like Mad Max and Fallout and just kind of the whole like genre, you know.
Hmm.
It's very interesting.
Totally.
Yeah, I think like especially with everything that's going I mean, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where like if every movie was like this, I'd be annoyed, but since there's very
It's
few movies like
very
this, it makes it
unique.
more interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, like going back to 1975 and still finding, or yeah, 1975, and still finding movies that you're like, wow, this is fucking, this is shocking, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I
It's
agree.
funny too. You know, because obviously, like Harlan Ellison's like a famous, you know, sci-fi author,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I'd remembered like seeing a documentary about him like years ago, and I was just like, oh, I should, now that I've watched this movie, I wonder, because I was just like, oh yeah, like, you know, kind of your typical like left-leaning like sci-fi like author, you know. And then I rewatched the documentary after watching this movie, and I was like, oh no, he was like a womanizing
Yeah.
misogynist.
Oh, see, but that's wrong.
He slept
Okay,
with hundreds of women
so
in his, you
let's
know.
kind of talk about this. Okay, so then like Vic ends up like escaping, and he takes the girl with him because she's like, "Oh, I love you. I want to go with you." And also spoilers. And so they leave, and they find blood, and he's like on the verge of death because he hasn't had a chance
He's
to eat.
starved. Yeah, he's been like
Hmm.
And
picked at and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a robot, but it doesn't really matter. So anyway, so then they're like, "Oh, he's gonna die," and she's like, "Oh well, there's nothing we can do for him. Like he needs food, and we don't have any food around." And so then it just cuts, and they're eating the girl, him and
Yeah.
like Vic and the dog, and they're eating the girl, and they're like kind of talking about like, "Oh, you know, she's like gone." And the last line of the movie is the dog saying like, "She was a nice girl, but she had bad taste." And they kind
Yeah,
of
he
laugh
said
at the pun.
she had marvelously good judgment,
Yeah.
but not particularly good
Yeah.
taste.
Very
Yeah,
good.
because they just ate her. If you
Which is such a
and
stupid line
apparently Harlan
to.
Ellis hated that line, which is
Hmm.
the most famous line in the movie, and he hated that line because he said that it was
So it was misogynistic, I
a
think.
moronic, hateful, chauvinistic last line, which I despise.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but what did you think the rest of your book
Right.
was?
Right. I mean, and to be fair, the idea is because I think what he like. I guess the way the novel ends, I've never read it, is like the dog asks if the boy knows what love is. Because the whole movie, it's like, does he love this
Hmm.
girl? Does he not? And then at
Right.
the end, the boy goes, "Oh, sure." A boy loves his dog, you know, and it's like, oh, he cares more about this relationship than the one with the girl.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
like the relationship with the girl always felt very like fake,
Circumstantial. Yeah.
Yeah.
like she was using him,
Yeah.
he was using
She was like
her. It
recruiting
was
him, wasn't
never.
she?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she only enlisted him because she was literally like, oh, you're good at killing people, what if you come down and kill all the leaders so we
Hmm.
can take over? Like that was her plan,
Yeah.
which he's like, no, I'm just gonna leave, this fucking sucks down here,
Yeah.
you know.
And I
So
think
it's the idea that he betrays her is very like they didn't really have anything.
Yeah, no
I think
way.
it's also interesting because like the original line which said like, oh, what's real love, a boy and his dog. It plays into it. The other one kind of does too, but just not as overt. But it's kind of this thing, and it's kind of like a slap in the face to the audience. Both of them a little bit are, where it's like the whole movie or the whole book. Again, we're trying to add our morals to this character,
Mhm.
and he does not have those morals,
Right.
you know. And so you get to the end, and he's with the girl, and in like in any society, you'd be like, oh, well, of course he's going to save the girl and not kill the dog or try to save them both or something. But the last line of the book is like, no, this is not the world that you live in. This is our world.
Hmm.
And in our world, the dog is more helpful to him than the girl is. Even though he likes the girl, he needs the dog. And so that's where the love comes from. It's from this like symbiotic relationship. And the other
Right.
one does it too in the terms of like, oh, we were always going to be together. But the original A Boy and His Dog one, it really works just because it does really cement this isn't the world that you live in anymore. This is our world, and this is how terrible it's become, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and
Which is a
I
much more
agree.
bleak ending than the movie gives you.
Well, it's also like it's kind of played as like for laughs too. So it's like
Mhm.
you're not supposed to be too broken up about it. But you could see why Mad Max is such a stronger idea of like, oh, what if this badass did have a sense of morality because he was alive before the war? You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Right.
what if this guy wasn't just a total psychopath? So
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's like if you look at Snake Plissken or like or Mad Max, they do like their morality just goes like, oh, they're just not gonna violate people sexually,
Right.
which is like, I mean, that's the bare minimum,
Yeah.
guys.
right,
Mm.
that's probably true in those worlds. And also, to be fair to Harlan Ellison attacking the ending, he was constantly either suing or being sued by or in public fights with every other like artist or writer he knew. So I don't
Yeah.
think that's that unusual that he was a hater about this.
Yeah.
He was just a
Just
permanent
Yeah,
a
hater.
weirdo.
it is funny when you're like, oh man, this guy wrote like 150 sci-fi movie or sci-fi books about like the wife factory, and then you read his life, and he like went to World War II and had like the most sniper kills, and then he would like get drunk every day and like get in bar fights, and you're like, oh, okay, like that's weird, like because you look at writers now and like they're on Twitter and they never leave their house, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. It's such a weird like it's just one of those. It is an interesting documentary if you ever.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's called Dreams with Teeth.
Oh, that makes sense.
He had a lot of
Interesting.
weird friend. He was friends with Robin Williams, so Robin Williams like narrates a lot of the documentary. It's one of those like strange. But yeah, he apparently slept with hundreds of women in the '80s, and
Damn.
not a nice man.
Right.
It sounds like a pretty cool guy, if you ask me.
So you could see how he really came up with this boy and his dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I
pretty
think-
easily.
Yeah, like I
The
think if you're
wasteland
gonna
of New
make a
York City.
movie, yeah, he
Cookie
lived
cutter.
he lived in Los. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Man, if I was in Cleveland, Ohio, I'd think about every depressing scenario I possibly
Totally.
could. And it is funny because like apparently the boy and his dog was so popular that he like people kept asking him for like a sequel. So then he just like wrote another one where they both die.
Yeah, they
Oh.
just die like horribly.
Damn.
And
He-
though apparently, because I was looking into all this after, there was supposed to be a third one called A Girl and Her Dog, where
Mhm.
blood like meets
Meets a
a
girl.
girl, and it's like, oh, it's
Mm.
the wasteland from a woman's perspective, because A Boy and His Dog is all from the man's perspective, but it just never got off the ground.
Which
I
I
couldn't
would
get to
have
the head of the
liked. I
character.
think. I
Yeah.
know. I would have liked that a little bit more just to see that perspective.
Yeah,
I think, like-
when I need to like fight people off and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Could
He
be
would
When
know
I
all
always
the ways
think
to not
about-
get raped. Absolutely. It's
And
like,
Furiosa's coming out, so you'll kind of get a version.
what if
of
she
that
has a
same-
dog?
so.
What if instead of a dog, she had a fucking car and she drove it through the wasteland?
I guarantee you that's
But
gonna
I think,
happen. I
like-
guarantee you. Spot on,
I,
sir.
You think about like there was that movie a couple years ago. I don't ever know what happened to it, but it was like this movie about this old like kind of pedophile guy who builds a robot that looks like a little kid, and he's like like that's all I know about the movie because it was supposed to premiere in Toronto and all this stuff, and then the backlash like reached this
Yeah.
this height. You know, of course it did.
Yeah,
But and I
It's
that
think
pretty
sounds
like
like the
provocative.
yeah.
there's always that thing where it's like, how far can you go in
I
fiction, you know?
know.
And I think it makes it harder when I think like if you had tried to do that as a book,
Yeah.
and like Boy and His Dog obviously started as a
Hmm.
book, it's a little
Yeah.
bit easier to
Not a
process.
big
But
deal.
watching it, it like hits you more viscerally, and so
Totally.
you're like, no,
Right.
like,
I love
but
reading horror
like,
books and like, but there's nothing will ever scare me more than like a video game or a film. Like just like books can kind
right,
of like get you to like a weird place,
Right.
but like it's definitely not visceral like that at all. Like 100% agree.
yeah,
Writing that book would have been something. There's like a book about like a teacher in Florida who like rapes all of her students, and it's like major on like all these Reddit forums, like the horror lit
right,
stuff, and
right,
like
Right, but you should never, or like
you can't make that movie.
in American Psycho, you could never see them describe what he does to people in
Right.
the book because it would literally be like
right.
Yeah.
NC-17,
Yeah. And
whereas
that was a shocking book.
when they cut away, you're like, that's good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, and I think like yeah, that's another interesting thing. Like you see, even like Fight Club or like the other movie that they from the writer of Fight Club with Sam
Oh,
Rockwell,
Choke.
David
where he's like a
Fincher.
choke, yeah. If you read the book Choke, it's super dirty.
Yeah.
Like it's bordering on
Hmm.
offensive, and the
Not
movie is
David
so
Fincher. I'm
tamed.
dumb. It's Chuck Palahniuk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chuck Palahniuk. It's so tamed
I was like, I'm
down
stupid.
that it's almost like not worth making, like
Right.
why did you even try to make this movie if you're going to take out all the parts that
That
made it
people wanted to
worth
read.
dissecting? Yeah.
Remember that book of his where you had to travel through time?
Okay,
through
we're not
car
doing
crashes?
let's talk about random books.
But
But my
what book was
point
it? I'm so
is
curious now.
I
it's
don't remember.
I don't remember. But
But that was full of weird sex stuff too. That guy just loves
Yeah.
weird sex
yeah,
stuff.
but like you
So
take all that stuff out, like Fight Club works because it's not about that. But like there does become a point where it's like how much can we translate? And like American Psycho is probably the best version of how to do like a super kind of controversial offensive book because it stays like it gives you enough that you see it, like you see what they're going with it, but it doesn't give you enough where the fact that you ever really hate Patrick Bateman, even though he's like despicable in every
Right.
way.
Christian Bale
right.
just does
Although
such a
to
good
be
job.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean obviously that's like one of the best
Yeah.
performances. But it's also like that too is like a black comedy. And like A Boy and His Dog is going for that. It's just it's also it's a little too bleak, I think, at times that you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's got some
It wants
jokes.
to do it, but it does it in a way where it's like, no,
Hmm.
maybe don't do this. Like,
It's almost like it's so bleak that like, but you could tell Harlan Ellison thought like, oh, this is going to be really funny. It's like funny written down. It's a little harsh seeing it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
why Mad Max is a little wackier.
And like we're
You
such a
know.
modern audience
also,
too. Like we just have such a different like I don't know expectation for things, especially now. Like I feel like everything is like so like anything
watered
offensive is so
down.
difficult to like talk about in
Mhm.
public.
It kind of reminds me
It's
of
like hard to.
uh, like a year or two ago we did From Dusk Till Dawn,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Tarantino's quirk in this is that he's an insane rapist killer
Right.
who like dismembers women. After. It's
Yeah.
like that's not a quirk. That's like the worst thing I've ever.
But back then it
heard.
was a quirk. I thought so too.
And they
I
kind
was
of
like,
Yeah.
oh, he's crazy.
they
It's
kind
just
of treat it like, oh hey,
it's like he's the
don't do that.
Kramer of the group.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
silly goose. Fuck off.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
like
this
there was
movie
that.
owns it at
Yeah,
least, you
that's
know.
true.
Yeah, there was that conversation like on Twitter where they were talking about how sex scenes shouldn't happen because the characters can't consent to you watching it.
Right.
Imagine like going like imagine just show not even this movie, but imagine showing those people like Easy Rider.
Yeah.
You're gonna like their brains would
I
explode.
know.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like that's what like when people talk about how our pulp culture has been watered down. That's kind of what they mean. It's like these movies, like A Boy and His Dog, is obviously like it's not for everyone. It's very controversial, but it's at least exploring things in a way that it's like the director is trying to show you something
Right.
where like you don't get that from these kind of safe movies that like The Creator, which I just saw, where it's not really trying to even say anything even though it has all the tools to say something.
Yeah.
But it like I think of the last movie that really like you think of Ex Machina where it like shocks you, but like you see a movie like The Creator, it's just kind of like oh, I know what this was going in,
Yeah.
and it just did
Yeah,
what I wanted it to
it
do.
didn't deviate from that
Where,
whatsoever.
Didn't
Like he's
deviate from
gonna
the
yeah,
save the
plan.
little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
and I think like sometimes you do want to watch that. Like I'm gonna watch that movie, Anyone But You, that romantic comedy, and I do not want that movie to throw any twists.
Oh,
I just
sure,
want it
sure.
to be
Yeah.
funny times, But like you think of like my favorite movies, like Ex Machina.
Mhm.
Me and Josh went to go see that movie at midnight, I think, and I immediately like the next day I went to go see it again
Yeah.
because I was like, hell
Dude,
yes, this movie's
Alex
like
Garland is just the
pushing
best.
it.
He's like the best working
Yeah,
director.
men.
Oh my god.
That wasn't me. I lived in a different city at that point, but
It was another. I mean, all you guys look the same to
you
me.
just think all
It was
white
both of
people are
us.
the
We all
same
three went
one
to go see
person.
it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah,
I'm
we were
pretty
all there.
sure.
Also, just for William's sake, that book is called Rant. It's a very weird
Oh,
book.
it's
If you've
about an
ever
old
read
man
yeah,
it,
that's
talking about
right.
stuff. Is that yeah? I never
you,
read that
yeah,
one.
you go,
It's like journal
he's
Yeah,
entries.
I
yeah.
remember hearing it. I remember I used to like really be interested in Chuck Palahniuk when I was like in high school, like early college.
Everyone kind of goes
Yeah,
through it.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like
I really liked
gross and fun.
Chuck. Yeah, I really liked him because he has a very good voice. But then you realize like all his movies or all his books are just Fight Club
Yeah,
in different scenarios where it's like it's a depressed guy. He kind of joins like this normal thing, like a support group,
yeah,
or like in Rant, I think he goes to like a healing doctor or something, or like the sex therapist in Choke.
yeah.
And then for some reason it becomes a global phenomenon that he's like becomes a leader of this underground
Right.
resistance.
Right.
Yeah. That's
And you're like,
yeah.
why
Because
does this keep
I
happening?
know.
because like his girlfriend in that book is literally like a dominatrix with one baby arm because she didn't develop right in the womb, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, tone it down, buddy.
Whenever you're
Yeah.
like 21, you're just like, fuck yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, you're like, that's the craziest thing I've ever
Can
seen.
you
Yeah.
But
imagine
see,
that?
like to me, like Avoidance Dog is kind of that of the '70s, but well, I guess it was written in the late '60s, but you can almost see where it's like, yeah, but they didn't have that then, so it
Right.
gets like a
Right.
Yeah.
pass because it's like they were like breaking new
Exactly.
grounds,
Exactly.
Well, and you think of like that other guy, Brett Easton Ellis, where he writes everything the same, but like it's kind of like, hey, what would happen if these characters that all talk the same were in college, or what would happen if one of them was a serial killer?
Mhm.
Where Chuck Palahniuk is just kind of like, oh no, everything's the same.
Yeah, I've
we just changed the sex acts, and that's
right. I would say Bret Easton Ellis, like, I can't remember a lot of like what I've gotten from his books, but I've read like American Psycho and Lunar Park and something else. But I feel like his characters always have
Rules
like,
of Attraction.
no, I don't think I read Rules of Attraction. Maybe Less Than Zero, I believe. But like they always like, I feel like his books like always have something to say about the people. Like it's gross and fucked
Mhm.
up, but like I know he's kind of someone that you could toss into the same group as like Chuck Palahniuk for just kind of being a shock jockey. But like I don't know, I always thought Bret Easton Ellis had something kind of going on behind the scenes.
Had the
Yeah,
Pretty
goods,
interesting.
I think
yeah.
Bret Easton Ellis, he knows how to make it a satire. He knows
Yeah.
like because in college he's kind of making fun of college and like the way that there's that high importance of like everyone thinks that they're oh, I'm the smartest,
Right,
I'm the
right.
one who's gonna figure it out,
Mhm.
And in American Psycho, obviously, he's making fun of work culture and all that kind of like, especially the higher uppers who like
Right.
the email job guys, so to speak.
Yeah. Murders and assassinations.
And even like in Less Than Zero, it's that kind of like partying life in LA.
Yeah.
That it's like
That, like,
it's meandering,
Yeah. And just cocaine and
Yeah.
depression.
Mhm.
And that's like I don't know. And there's very like I mean I would say American Psycho is the only good film adaptation of any of those movies, but because I've seen the others and they're very mid. But yeah,
They're
with Chuck Palahniuk,
wishy-washy.
it's almost a different like. Oh no, the movie Fight Club's elevated by David Fincher, but the book Fight Club is just okay. It's
Right.
very like
Yeah.
kind of a different thing. And I've never read A Boy and His Dog, so I don't know
either.
how it translates from page and screen. But
I might though.
And I think one of the things that works is that like with Chuck Palahniuk, he kind of talks about or he like. And I like Bret Easton Ellis. I like Chuck Palahniuk. Like I said, I've read a lot of his books. I don't want to come off as a hater,
Same.
but he does like kind of say the same thing every time. Where Bret Easton Ellis kind of, like he said, he talks about a different section.
Mhm.
He might kind of come to the same conclusion. That's just because he's kind of like a sad sack,
Right.
That's just
Yeah,
the
I mean,
conclusion he's
and
coming
also
Characters
to.
are pretty
like
real.
the conclusion is generally
Mm-hmm.
that like this is like society and rich people are bad, which is like that's everyone's conclusion these
Right,
days.
right. We're all leading up to this point.
That's gonna keep being true.
Yeah.
It's not
Until
gonna
the world,
change.
Yeah,
like,
it's not
if art is
changing.
going to change the world, like we're definitely going down a path of just total destruction. Like we're gonna have
Right,
to blow up
right.
the world before anything to get better, and then when we get better, we're gonna be a boy and his dog. Like we have to go from like this
Right.
capitalist shit show.
Just pure
Like those are
Yeah,
savagery.
our
Yeah.
like
options.
just kind of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, fuck.
So yeah, I think that I think every once in a while you need to kind of see these kind of movies, these ones that are outside of the grain, that are moved away from how we should. Because like, what better place to explore these kind of worlds and try to get into this head than like fiction? You don't want to see this
Yeah,
in real
Right.
life. I don't want to see a true crime documentary about someone who's doing this for real, but
yeah.
to
It
kind
makes
of
it
explore
palatable.
it in a world and like what would disgust someone who routinely like goes through life eating bug infested meat and just like taking whatever he wants from whoever he runs into?
Right.
Like
And
what would their antagonist be? And I think it's
because that's
interesting.
like it's one of those things where every like because even like Mad Max and Fallen and stuff, it's always like a civilized person
Hmm.
confronting this world, and it's never, oh, this person just born into it. As far as
Yeah.
they know, this
Hmm.
is as good as it gets. And to me, that's
Right.
like way more interesting to be like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
this guy
I
doesn't even
agree.
know that he's like this fucked up, you
Yeah,
know?
and like going
Hmm.
back to the title and Don Johnson, and who does a great job. Like I think this
Oh
is
yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
Don
he's great.
Johnson's weirdest and best role. Like he does
Mm-hmm.
like it's the one that it's against everything else. But you have Don Johnson. Like this movie would not have worked if it starred someone older than Don Johnson is in this movie. He was about 16.
Yeah,
Because if he's
totally,
like even
totally.
21, you would just hate this character.
Hmm.
Like you still like I think that's the only thing that kind of keeps you watching is that you're like maybe he can redeem himself eventually. And
Right.
I
He's
think
an
like
innocent in a way, even though
yeah,
he's not.
exactly.
He's
He's a
mentally an
Yeah, it's
innocent.
like weird to
yeah,
think
he's
about.
naive
Yeah.
is the best way to put it. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
understand what he's doing is wrong, and in
Hmm.
a way that kind of makes him endearing. Even though like the more you like step back, the more disgusted you are with him.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, even like Fallout 3 and 4, like you definitely do start off in the real world. Like now that we're talking about it, like I'd read that on Wikipedia that the novella was about like someone who has never seen the real world, but like it
right.
is true. Like this is the only thing that I think I've ever seen where the main character
Yeah,
is
they just
straight
start.
up
Well,
from
yeah,
the
because in
waste.
all the Fallout's, it's like if you live in the vault, you're like ostensibly in a normal society, which
Right.
is funny because the vaults in Buena's Dog is like
Is the place
horrible,
for
like a
the
nightmare,
under
you know.
the
And I
down
know like the
under.
vaults are kind of supposed to be like dystopian, but you'd still like have like a bed and food every day and stuff. So it's like
It would
okay,
have a
it's more
semblance of
reacting.
society.
Or
Yeah.
like in Mad Max, it's like okay, he was like a cop, like a young cop when like society fell, you know. So it's like he still
Right.
has that semblance of like what a human should be, you know. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
you know what I do like about Mad Max though, because Boy and His Dog is like, oh, here's like realistically how shitty everything is, and in Mad Max it's like, oh, here's how realistically bad everything is, except also there's still unlimited gasoline. So
Yeah.
just drive,
It's
drive
gonna be
any car
fucking
you
sick.
want.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
There
We
are
have enough
cars
electricity for
everywhere.
fucking.
I hate to do this. I hate to do this, but actually, there are certain oil fields that they have to defend. That's what two of the three movies are about,
Right,
Josh.
right.
Maybe
There is some
watch,
difficult
maybe
with
watch the
gasoline,
films next time,
I've only
Betty.
played the
but for
game.
all the good scenes, there are unlimited pieces of gasoline,
I've only
unlimited
played the
flex.
PlayStation 4 game, so
2 days ago,
Oh,
I
Mad
saw.
Max.
2 days ago, I saw a tanker that could haul that oil. You want to get out of here? Talk to me.
I'll just say it. Immortan Joe's burning a lot of oil with his giant big rig army
The
Yeah.
that's
Martin Joe has the oil to burn, baby.
constantly going.
Anyway, go see Furiosa this
Yeah, go.
summer.
It's funny. Yeah, go
Yeah, it's gonna be
watch
good.
this, and then see like jump ahead 50 years to the Fallout show in Furiosa to see how different like it ended up.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
We're like, and I think
yeah.
like even Mad Max Fury Road, which is a little bit more toned down than like Road Warrior. I mean, he's kind of toned down. Like Mad Max is pretty hardcore, and
Yeah.
then Road Warrior like has some of it. Like everyone's kind of gross except for Max, and then Beyond Thunderdome, like they're still kind of treat people like shit, but like they're not really like doing anything to their bodies.
It's
And
more
then
cartoonish, kind of like
yeah,
Satan.
by
Yeah.
Fury Road, like it's just Morton Joe who's the disgusting monster, and
Yeah.
like his society, but it's not actually the people. And
Right. His
so,
kingdom is gross as fuck.
but
The
they
the
like
citizens are normal for
the
sure.
women's kingdom is like nice, it's like utopia.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And so you do see, like, George Miller is still willing to kind of make it a little bit risque, but he also realizes that he has $150 million to do it, and so he
Yeah.
kind of like throws it in
Well, yeah,
with
it's the
like out people
spectacle,
knowing,
and
like you have the
obviously,
wives who are like it's clear what's been happening to them.
yeah,
They
Right.
just
they don't
don't
have to
Right.
say
say
it, you
it,
just know
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Mhm.
And so I
it's
think that makes it, and I think it's like he still makes Max like there's that scene where Max is just gonna leave him, like he does not care about these people,
Right. Right.
and so he still has it. So I think George Miller is still willing to do it, but I'm very curious how far the Fallout show is gonna go because it's like Amazon couldn't even really make the Lord of the Rings have any
yeah.
bite to it. So I
Yeah.
wonder
No,
how
it's
what they're gonna
it's
do
gonna
to
be very surface level. I
Yeah.
guarantee it. It's probably gonna be fun. Like Fallout 4 is a fun game,
Mhm.
but it's not gonna
Mhm.
And
light the commentary on
There,
fire.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that. Again, like I love me some I Am Legend. I love a lot of these post-apocalyptic movies, but it
Yeah.
is kind of the thing that we even had to deal with when our film, the last ones, was dealing with a more serious version of like looking at the end of the world. And I remember like there are people who are like, "Oh, I think this is a zombie movie," and it's like it is a zombie movie, but it's not about zombies. It's that's the world
Yeah.
that they live in, and that's the world they're coming up in.
It's
And
like that's funny to me because I know, like, I kept up with The Walking Dead. I only saw the first season, but I was
Yeah.
always like, God,
Saw
is
a few
anyone having
episodes.
fun in this world? And I know it's supposed to be like a miserable place, but it's like there should be some fun for the audience. It sounds like
Yeah.
later there were like crazy
well, and
characters who were fun, but
it's funny you say that because
Yeah.
I watched me and Josh watched the first season and then we kind of stopped.
yeah, it's just
And I ended up watching some of the episodes with the Negan character played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And people hated that character because he was so evil. But I liked that character because he was the only one who felt like, oh, this isn't real, guys. Like like this world is never gonna happen. So
yeah,
let's
let's
Yeah.
play
just
with the
roll with it.
ideas. Like let's
Yeah.
show a completely morally in or corrupt character who just has
Yeah.
no morality anymore. Like it's just gone.
Yeah.
And that makes it more interesting than like, oh, let's show a bunch of people argue about whether they should kill their dad who's been bit and is already in a coma. It's like I do
Yeah.
not
It's like
care about this.
I've seen that
Murder him,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a great
See Dawn of the
example
Dead.
is Westworld. In Westworld, like the whole argument of Westworld, not the first season. The first season's very good, but
Mhm.
after that, the argument becomes like, oh, should we kill these robots? Yes, they're fucking robots. They don't have it. They're not real. Like they might think they're real, but that's a program. Kill
Yeah.
them all. And so like you kind of lose that. And so I think that's what makes the first season work so well is that it kind of says like, oh, but what if they're robots, but they like, do they still count? And then they just kind of ruin it because like if they're murdering people, murder them away, you know?
Yeah. You would kill a human for killing
Yeah.
people.
And I think like, these kind of movies are interesting. And so, I think like these kind of hardcore sci-fi, a lot of people think hardcore sci-fi, they think like super like realistic, oh, The Martian's hardcore. But this is another version of hardcore sci-fi where it's taking place in a world hopefully will never exist, but it's playing with
Well, it's
ideas that like
2024. There's
we'd want to
time,
see, yeah.
you know.
Yeah. 2024. It's good.
In the
You know,
year
you know what joke
2000.
what joke from this movie I always liked, even though it's barely funny, but it stayed with me since the first time I saw it, where he's like listing off all the presidents because Blood is constantly quizzing him on U.S. history because Blood's trying to educate him, be like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you could be way less stupid, and he's like, list the presidents, and he goes like Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, Kennedy, and the idea was like,
Yeah.
oh, the Kennedys are
They just
such
won.
like a dynasty, they're gonna like
Mhm.
be it. And it's like obviously that never happened, but this movie was made in '75, so he like
Right,
didn't
right.
have that foresight. And
Yeah.
now RFK's running for president, so maybe
And
it'll come true.
he's looking to do great work.
He is gonna
vote for RFK, guys. That's our endorsement.
yeah, it's our official
we
stand.
love RFK here.
Vote for
Yeah.
Cheryl Hyde's
I-
husband.
I want to make like a joke about his policies, but I don't even know what they are other than he hates
He
vaccines.
hates vaccines. He probably
Not
loves
great.
the troops. You know the story.
Hopefully
Yeah.
he follows that other president who died because he caught pneumonia. Who
William
was that?
Henry
Was it-
Harrison.
Harrison. Bringing it
Deep
bringing
cut.
it- I know. We're going big, guys.
Why do you
Yeah.
guys know that?
Because he died at his
actually a president's
inauguration.
podcast.
Oh.
Yeah, no. He gave a
oh.
long speech, and
He got
He supposed
pneumonia.
he got pneumonia because he gave such a
I
long
know about
speech with
that.
no coat, and then he died
Yeah.
like
Right.
4 weeks later because they did not know how to treat colds in like the 1800s. But
Right.
they also suspect too that this is
And
getting way off topic.
the good news is we do know how to treat codes now, but RFK doesn't want to treat colds because he hates them.
Yeah.
So we have the only opportunity to let lightning strike
Right,
twice.
that's
Mhm.
true. He's
Can
probably
we
gonna
let it
die
go?
from steroid injections before a cold, but
He
Yeah.
can't move his
I
neck.
can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Um,
But anyway, good movie.
Yeah. It.
Kind of went off the rails. But I think it's important. I think we kind of talked about like why these kind of movies, like just because
Right.
they're necessarily morally wrong, you shouldn't like just dismiss them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Will we cover
if anything,
Salo?
to me, it's
Maybe.
like fascinating to see like, okay, what is like if you're following someone with no morality, what's the movie going to be? Because it can't have the
Mm-hmm.
classic hero structure. In a
Right.
way, this movie almost still does, but it's almost like incidental. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
I would say I think that the movie that comes, or the show slash video game, I think you guys might know where I'm going with this. Then is The Last of Us. I'm not The Last of Us. Yeah, yeah, The Last of Us,
Oh yeah,
the
that was an
HBO
HBO
show and the
show.
video
Yeah,
Right.
games. Like I feel like those really that is the most, besides The Road, the most hard hitting post apocalyptic shit
right.
that I've
Because
ever seen.
Joel is
Yeah.
kind of a bad guy.
He's kind of
Well,
a
and I
bad
think
guy. The second video game goes fucking hard. Like there is just no joy in that whole game, and it's great, and it all makes sense, and it's compelling. And I think that's why people didn't like it as much because it's fucking bleak
It's
as
too
hell.
brutal. Yeah.
well, and
Yeah,
I
and it's
think
close
like
there.
to me the most interesting thing about The Last of Us, and from what I heard, the sequel does the same, is that it's kind of the opposite of Boy and his dog, where it's all these people who live in that world, that morally corrupt world that doesn't have like you have to kill to survive,
Hmm.
but they're all trying to cling to the past. Like they're all
Totally.
like, "Oh, I need revenge after this guy," even
Hmm.
though they've been killing all these. Like at any, it's kind of like that Kill Bill thing where it never stops. Like
Totally. Exactly.
she wants the bride wants revenge, so she goes and kills Vivica A. Fox, and then her daughter's gonna want revenge, and so then
Hmm.
Bill's or the bride's daughter's gonna want revenge. It's just like never gonna end, and I think it's
Right.
like to me that's what makes The Last of Us so interesting. It's all these people they just want to hold on, and
Yeah.
that's the way they can. And it makes it even more depressing, to be honest, than even
Totally.
this movie. But I think that's what makes it so interesting.
It's so much easier for pettiness to go on than joy and hope and
Yeah,
peace. Like even in the face of all, like even COVID showed us that. Like
right.
everyone got so fucking weird, and like families were split apart because of all these like political opinions and stuff, and it was so fucking brutal. And it's like that's exactly what would happen if like if COVID had like wreaked us even more havoc. Like I don't
Right.
know. That's sad, but like fucking A, man. I feel like we would be living the last. I think The Last of Us really got what would happen if we as a society right now had to go apocalyptic. It would just be so fucked up.
And if you want to see what that future would be like, then you go in November and you double in on RFK.
We're trying to
You will
make
see.
that world happen.
You will see what happens when we don't have any more vaccines or science funding.
Yeah.
That's our endorsement. RFK.
Right.
Fuck you, science. But yeah, I think these are interesting movies. I think we talked quite a bit. I think there was a good discussion because we kind of branched
Mhm.
out and figured out a way to talk about this movie without mentioning how
Just-
much
Just how much
sexual assault
sexual
there is.
violence is
I
in
know.
it. There's a lot, but it's
Yeah.
mostly off screen implied.
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah.
it's not like a hard watch. Like
And
It's not like
And I will
irreversible or
say,
something
you
like
know,
that.
if you're someone who doesn't like that, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch this movie. If you can
Yeah.
handle it, it's not very like it's not super gratuitous. It's just happening, you know. But
Mhm.
you know, if I wouldn't blame you if you're like, no, turn this off. And also, if you watch it on Tubi, they literally just took
Yeah.
a VHS version of it, and so it has
That
the
was
like
crazy.
FBI warning at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
halfway through the movie, they just
There's the tracking.
they're using the tracking.
Several times.
There's
I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me,
there's
Tubi?"
something
Yeah,
beautiful
that
about
was-
Tubi.
I love Tubi.
I know.
and-
I love Tubi too. I like to just
and-
let the movies run. Like just whatever you want to show me.
Yeah,
Let's
just-
go.
And watch
One
the
of
empty
these-
space on
one of
Tubi.
these
I'll
days,
add
I'm gonna,
tracking
like,
next time.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
click on it. It'll be the DVD pause menu, and then someone like moving their mouse over to click.
I
play,
know.
You could only be so lucky.
But yeah, I would definitely check this out. If you can handle it, I would. It's an interesting film.
Mhm.
It's pretty short too. But yeah, Boy and His Dog. Any last words, guys?
Uh, no, apocalyptic shit is, I don't know. It's crazy. There's a lot of room to find out who we are at our core, who we are at our core, and sometimes it's not so pretty. And this movie really goes there, and I'm glad that I've seen it and discussed it.
Thank you. Josh?
Yeah, and I'd say if you're in a nuclear holocaust situation, try to find a dog that can telepathically speak to you and tell you what to do,
Yes.
and just listen to him.
And also, if you can, try to have that dog sing the ending theme song about you and him. Because for some reason, that's a thing. Like, it's so funny how hardcore this movie is. And then it ends with the dog singing a song about them. Like, it's a Disney
Yeah.
movie. Like, you sing, like,
Yeah,
the bare
got a
necessities.
boy and a dog. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's. I
It's
honestly,
like,
that's like it comes back around in that way almost.
I
You
just want
know.
to be
Right,
on. I
right.
just want to be on Casino. Go back. If I had a time machine, I would go to the Casino set and see these two, like that guy, interact with Martin Scorsese, and just Martin Scorsese be like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Um, but
Just a
yeah,
boy in
and it
his
was Billy
casino.
Joe's was nephew. But anyway, yeah, go check it out. And guys, next week we have a very special episode. It's the end of the year wrap up.
Oh,
We're gonna
yeah.
talk about it. We're gonna pick our favorites as always. We all
And
pick 3, so we have 9, and we might even have a 10th one this year. What could our 10th movie be? Who knows? We'll see what can fill that empty space. So come join us
got a
next
hint
week.
about what the
You
movie's gonna be.
no?
No.
Oh,
Come see what fills a boy and his dog. But yeah, check it out. It's gonna be fun. We'll talk about what our favorite films are of the year. Maybe we'll give you some special ones you haven't heard of to check out, or probably we'll talk about Oppenheimer for like 3 hours. Either way, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll see you guys next week on the Bomb Squad.